Every exemplar prophet had the example and teachings for every race, gender, or other grouping of the community that they were sent to. In the case of Prophet Muhammad, this was to the international audience till the judgment day. We need to have the best character and treat the other gender the best. Spouses need provided for in a way complementary to how one eats and dresses. Whether taking charge of someone of another gender in terms of marriage, or in terms of employment, or some other way of being in charge, you ask for blessing. Marital sex is a religious act. So, when you take part in it, you seek refuge from the devil and seek refuge for what is the result of what you do. Marital sex should be in a productive way. 2 things are forbidden. Well, 3 if you include the post-childbirth healing period. So no sodomy, and not while she's menstruating. Don't turn down your spouse for no good reason. When you get married, try to make it about what is productive. So somebody who is affectionate and who would be good to produce children with. If you prefer looks or bodily prowess, wealth, or status over character in picking a spouse, you may become a loser. It's perfectly permissible to play games with one's spouse and to take turns in beating each other at those games. And when it comes to menstruation and the sexual fluid, just do your best to get it off of any clothes that it ends up in. It is best for women to fill up the front rows for ritual. Well, the front rows for them are the back rows, and the men fill up the front rows. I said it in the wrong order, but you know what I mean. And obviously this makes sense for various reasons if the women are bending over in front of the men and they're looking forward. But there's usually a space in between the men's and women's groupings. So the men show up and they're supposed to fill the front lines first and then the second and all that, and then the women fill from the other side. You can wipe over your socks if you got ablutions before putting on the socks. And in reference to the previous one, there's a bunch of narrations that talk about how even in Prophet Muhammad's time, there were men who tried to make their way towards the back, and, that sort of stuff. So, he had to say more than once to tell people, fill up those front lines. And now that there's a lot of separation between the men and women, there's a lot more of the not filling up the front and all that. And multiple, mostly empty rooms isn't exactly the most sensible way to use a building either. It's good for spouses to wake each other up for voluntary prayer at night. If someone has realizations they can wake people up for extra prayers at night. It's not, I had a dream, wake up, you can wait for that. When a woman prays, it's better for her to pray in her private room where she's not seen by outsiders versus in the courtyard or in the field. One woman can form a row by herself in the prayer. If you're dividing things up and there's only one woman. And the example is somebody standing next to the prophet on the right side, and then one of his wives behind them. A spouse can get something that is sound to replace something that is owed to due to breaking or whatever by the other spouse. Now, of course, it's important to know what this sort of stuff is. Some people could have things that are more valuable than people realize they are, but yeah. And just like a man waking up from sleep, if he knows this is sexual discharge, a woman is also supposed to get a full bath in such a case. It is important that women get special opportunities for education. So there should be days set apart where only the women are getting the answering or other such opportunities for that. 2 or 3 of a woman's kids who die in childhood, and by childhood we don't mean 18 or 21, ending that or some silly thing like that they've invented nowadays. If they die and she's patient, then that's as a liberation from hellfire. People can still get pregnant if someone pulls out. Menstruating women can still comb hair and fix food and share food with their husband and other people during the mourning period. The antimony and that sort of stuff is not put around the eyes, and it's limited to a few days, except for a woman mourning her husband. In such, they don't wear dyed clothes and they don't wear perfume. All the women and children are brought forth for the holiday prayers, the 1st of the 10th month and the 10th of the 12th month. And so because some women will be postpartum and other women may be menstruating, this means that the prayer should be held somewhere other than a place dedicated as a masjid. Or in case of the Musalla An-Nur building and room in the house, well, those doors could be opened if I was to hold the prayer there and there was a woman who couldn't step in because of that. But when the holiday prayers have been held at home, the condition weather-wise and otherwise has always been that we could step outside and say it in the grass, because it is better, even if you have a dedicated place, to step outside and say those prayers outside. Artificial lengthening of the hair, the putting on of wigs, and the tattooing, both the person who has it done to them and the person doing it, are cursed because they're, well, perhaps maybe if there's not even issues, that there could be some clothing-related issues that the men may need to straighten their clothes, but the women were ordered to have a slight delay in raising up from prostrating so that the men could shift their clothes. In that day, in the days of the Prophet, a lot of people were very poor and didn't have clothing from shoulder to foot, so they would, move it back and forth a little as they moved. So there was allowance given for that. Men and women who imitate each other in terms of their gender-specific things, well, that is, that's cursed behavior. Now, some of that varies per things. Some people will be like, any color people will treat like it's some sort of gender-specific thing. Now, in Islam, there are some purple and red and pink and blue clothes that would not be allowed. Oh, and yellow and orange for the men. But it's not that. It's that urine, saffron, and blood is not allowed as dyeing material for anything that men wear. And I don't know if there's any, I don't remember if there's anything else specifically forbidden totally for the men, but those are not allowed for men's clothing. And of course, men in Islam, we don't wear gold. Now, there's something specific to cultures that you may want to pay attention to. In this culture, you may not want to do this or that or the other, but, And of course, that doesn't pertain to something that, where people say that old-fashioned clothes are like wearing a dress or something. It's like, no. You can tell the difference between a men's thobe or cowl or whatever and the women's clothes. Women should maintain the permission of, the household. So if someone's not supposed to enter, then they don't let them enter. And they should check with their husbands when it comes to, if they're going to fast. Women shouldn't annoy their spouse, and neither should the men. And in general, the men may ask in terms of the preference of the fasting outside of Ramadan or something, obliged like that. A man can't tell his wife, don't fast during Ramadan. She's supposed to disobey when it comes to that sort of stuff, whatever Islam has required. But yeah, in general, outside of that, it helps to consult. And I have, I've definitely been made aware of people that thought, oh, well, the teasing and all that other stuff that people do and the pranks and all that. Some families have stayed together, but it seems that that's one of the ways that people think, end up getting divorced and, other complications arising from that. It's better to acquire thankfulness, helpfulness, and belief than it is to acquire silver and gold. And of course, you should mention through your speech, the chief of remembrances is, of course, the Quran, but it's better to build up in that. Marriage requires permission of those being married. In my country, that was actually something that happened later, because the Bible does not require that, and certainly forced marriage was something that the Bible actually did allow. There are some circumstances where you say, it's better that they do get married, but then again, those marriages aren't forced. The people who have already committed serious sins with each other are generally told to get married if they are the same faith. And there is the general ethic of somebody doesn't say no, they don't resist, and they've already been judged to be sane and all that, then, it's considered as a yes. But in terms of a marriage, there's the general Islamic principle of the wali, and the wali is somebody who acts as a guardian, and the guardian is supposed to separately find out, is this what you want? And is this in your interests in this world and the next? And not just, somebody says, yes, So they're testifying on the behalf. And some people, and you're not supposed to refuse people getting married because you personally just, you prefer your relative to marry somebody else or that sort of stuff. Women should not be stopped from going to the masajid. And that also means that society should be made safe so the women can go out in groups or with their husband or, whatever the case is. Society should be safe enough that that is the thing. So it's a collective duty in that sense. Now, some people said that, well, it would have been forbidden if it was known what people were doing. And it's like, well, it's not forbidden because not everybody does that, and people are responsible for, the sorts of things that they do. Now, I do see how some women, even in the parking lot, they start undoing buttons and taking things off. And until I saw it in a couple parking lots of masajid, I would have just, I knew people did it at church, but, what one group of people does is not what another group of people does. Don't blame it on the religion. It's just what people have done for themselves, right? Hitting your face and tearing your clothes and other things of the days of ignorance. That's, again, don't blame that stuff on Islam. You see people sackcloth and ashes and all that stuff. Again, Islam does not have a concept of mourning clothes. We're not supposed to go to the graveyard and turn the place into a place of prayer and that sort of ritual that's not fit for a graveyard. And we're also not supposed to, bring the women there. And certainly not what happens in some places is that there are professional mourners of some sense or another. So you bring women to the graveyard and they cry over the graves and stuff like this. And you can even pay to have this done for your relatives in some places. And, yeah. Those who believe in Prophet Muhammad are not sodomites. They do not have sex with women during their menstruation. They don't go to soothsayers. They don't pay towards having an oracle read. They don't believe that these people are getting something from the unseen. Let's be real, they're all cold readers, or they're not even, or hot readers or whatever. They're not getting the messages from the divine. And if they are getting messages from the spirit world, well, we've been told about that too, is that things get mixed in and they don't know what's true or not from what they've said. And they tend to throw in some of their own stuff too. And it's a lie if you have a baseless speculation. You're just filling in the gaps. That's a lie, whether it ends up being a correct guess or not. You don't shuffle a deck of cards or look at somebody's supposed, it's usually not even the real horoscope, astrology chart. And, this is just not acceptable behavior. And by the way, when I speak about that stuff on my channel, I'm not, astrology means saying stuff with the stars. Astronomy and astrology used to be in the same category. Symbolism is symbolism. And I'm not saying that anything happened because of this star and that star, this person's character or any of that sort of stuff. Certainly, there's some effect on plants and stuff that happens, but, so you don't believe in that sort of stuff. You don't, a medium, a kahana is what is said here. Kahana is an access-controlling priest. You are supposed to protect your modesty in anywhere public, and public baths where people uncover and see each other. If everybody's got their own stall and all that stuff, but otherwise it's just not appropriate behavior. And it says tearing the veil between you and God, but not the lifting the veils on the way to God. It's a different type of you know. Now, it's said that the majority of people that are going to go to hell are women, and this is out of ingratitude to the husbands. So this, see, it doesn't refer to the other women. It doesn't refer to the good women. So that alone tells you what's going on. But let's be real. Women live longer. More of them hit puberty. So more of them are going to be held accountable for their deeds. That's just how it is. We find that men and women are both rewarded for their deeds and their influence and all that. If you touch your central private part, and that would also include in between the buttocks, then you should get a new ablution. Or, it means that the ablution doesn't count, so you don't pick up the scriptures, you don't say your prayers. And also in the previous narration, women who give alms are as somebody who, isn't of that group. Well, they should give alms to not be part of the group that goes to hell. If a woman gets her menstruation while on pilgrimage, then, that can be dealt with. She can still be counted as performing her pilgrimage. She's just not supposed to do the 5 daily prayers, and she's not supposed to do the circumambulations and the going in between. Some narrations don't mention all those details, but we're going to find all of those. Don't hang up ropes and stuff to lean on to do extra prayers. Go get your rest. If that's what's going on. I guess if a person needs a crutch to stand or that sort of thing, they can use a crutch. Disabled people can, alter their positions accordingly. And the disabled people know best how to do that themselves. Some people are going to say, well, this person over here does this way. It's like, not everybody has the same joint or muscular or whatever issue they have, right? A husband can perform the burial washing of the wife and lead the burial prayers. Of course, the best to do this was Prophet Muhammad, but the idea was, if, I don't think he ended up, except for maybe Khadijah, he didn't do this for any of his wives because they all lived to be after him, right? After menstruation, the bath is like any other full bath. One's supposed to reach the roots of the hair. If the braiding has been done, it's the time to braid and unbraid, or unbraid and braid. And something like water soaked with the leaves of a lote tree or something else can be used at that time towards washing up. Some people, there's laurel in the shampoos, so people can use the shampoo and that sort of stuff. Women are to avoid the funeral processions. In this era, we are not to bow or prostrate to religious officials. Duty to your spouse is part of duty to God. It's permissible to get a divorce because of defects in religion. Now, you shouldn't do this over sectarian differences or differences in schools of thought. And it's not to compete in levels of blame either, when this is the sort of thing that when a woman wants to initiate a divorce, she should give back her marriage gifts as part of it. Water, salt, and fire are things considered important enough to share that it's a fault if one can share them and another person has a need and they ask for it. So get them a little bit of salt. Let them carry off a little bit of water. Let them light a stick or whatever. women are only required to cover down to their ankles, but it's permissible for them to have something that drags. But if they encounter something that's not clean, they're just supposed to consider what comes after it to, cover for things. Now, they should lift things up before going into, so they don't drag over a restroom or whatever. But, as far as wandering about, they shouldn't worry too much about it. If a woman's husband or children have needs, then her providing for them through giving in charity can be done through them. Elsewhere, we find that if a woman provides for her own needs, it's as if she gave charity. It's permissible to get ablutions with seawater, especially if one doesn't have much fresh water and seawater is more available. As soon as the parts that some people circumcise meet, then a full bath is obligated as far as sexual activity. And by that, of course, we mean the foreskin and the clitoral hood, is that if those areas touch, then a person's to get a full bath.